Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Jones, and I serve as the 2020-2021 Naspa Alabama State Director. I want to welcome everyone to the 2021 Naspa Alabama Drive-In Conference. This has been a truly unprecedented academic year, but Naspa Alabama has continued to make its mark on the student affairs profession, primarily through the work of our Naspa Alabama board. I want to personally thank board members past and present for shaping our organization into one of the best NASPA organizations within Region 3 and across the country. It is my hope that you find today and future efforts as beneficial to your growth personally and professionally. Our theme for this year's conference is Together Towards Tomorrow. This is in recognition of our shared challenges across our campuses and institution types. Yet, we persevere and move towards a future that is better and brighter for our campuses and the students we serve. We can only do this together, and it is our hope that you make meaningful connections necessary for us to actually do this together. So please take advantage of our networking opportunities, as these relationships are typically the most important aspect of our conference annually. We started the conference off yesterday with our new Professionals Institute. Attendees were able to learn some of the most important skills necessary to the development, from student development practices, budgeting, assessment, and areas of growth that will aid them in their future positions as future mid-level managers. Today, we will continue to share innovative practices from around the state through our breakout sessions and culminating with our Chief Student Affairs panel. But first, it is my honor to get us kicked off by introducing our morning keynote speaker. Dr. Josie Alquist is a digital engagement and leadership researcher, speaker, and author. She teaches teens, young adults, education professionals, and campus executives how to humanize technology tools and prioritize building online communities. She also serves as a research associate and instructor at Florida State University, creating curriculum to build digital literacy and leadership skills for undergraduates up to doctoral level students. Her new book, Digital Leadership in Higher Education, Purposeful Social Media in a Connected World, was listed as an Amazon #1 new release for college and university student life. Without further ado, Dr. Josie Alquist.
Hello, thank you, Chris. It's so wonderful to be joining y'all today from a very rainy Los Angeles, and I have so much goodness to share today. And I just want to thank you for spending some time with me and with this drive-in virtual conference, and knowing that there's probably lots of other things going on in your world. Know that all of my slides, we will get you those in case you maybe missed one or you want to refer back to it and also don't feel like you got to write all kinds of notes. I am going to be activating the chat though a lot. So if you are willing and able, stretch out those fingers with me and get ready to have hopefully some fun interaction. So without any further ado, I will turn it over to my slides and get us going. So today I'm talking about digital leadership through the lens of both what we see out in higher education, but especially in student affairs. Just a little background on me. I started my both college career and professional career, obviously, in student affairs, worked at campuses for 12 years. And then as I got my doctorate, I then sprouted out, went rogue to become a speaker and consultant, of which you see today. And no surprise, I'm on all the interwebs, from my website and social media platforms, that I would love to be connected with you and hear where you're coming in from. And so do not hesitate to reach out and say hello. And talking about saying hello and getting us going on the right foot, because goodness, we're probably real glad it's Friday, is I want to get the chat going with a little bit of gratitude. We know that gratitude and thankfulness practices actually have so many positive effects. And so let's get the chat going, thinking about just one thing. I know we are so challenged. We would rather be face-to-face right now, giving handshakes and hugs. But what is one thing that you have been grateful for because of technology over this last year or so. And it can be related to work or not. So the one I always go back to is I am very grateful for FaceTime with my nieces and my nephew who always live far from me, but in a moment's notice, I can see their laughing faces and see their adventures. So please add that in the chat. Just one little thing that you're grateful for that is based a little bit in digital. I would love to see it. And also, if you're at all interested in sharing out some of your responses or things that you're going to be learning today, of course, you can tweet them out. I'm at Josie Alquist. And then the hashtag I use often is DigLead. I also know there might be one for the conference too. And so keep your eye out for that. So seeing some come in, shorten my commute. Agree, Courtney, with that. We've got some better collaboration from Krista. Ryan shares, thankful for the chance to stay engaged with students. Awesome. All right. Streaming apps. Yes, Jay. Just like today. Glad to be able to work from home. Awesome. Microsoft Teams, Hopin. Yes, this is my first experience on this platform. So awesome. Okay. And so today I'm going to be talking to you about leadership through the lens of how we use that, just tangible and sometimes very soft skill, how it needs to be transformed into digital practices and seen as a legitimate tool, especially in student affairs. Because what we have found, even before COVID-19, is that campuses and those that are part of a college or university, we have to be able to show and tell our value. And social media is just one of those tools to do that. And so I hope to give you lots of examples. I'm also finding through my research, and especially during this challenging year, we need relational, human campus leaders who can show up when there is crisis as well as celebration and learn to use our influence or impact to make leadership happen online. And if I was to summarize down, digital leadership to me is basically mindfully connecting social media with a clear purpose, that you are having an intent in order to have whatever that impact is with people that you want to serve. But before we get into leadership, let's think about how the heck we got here. And this is not going to be COVID related at all. It's going to be actually pretty light and hopefully kind of fun as we scroll back the clock to early days of technology, at least for me. And we're going to start in the 80s because y'all, I'm an 80s baby. And maybe you just love the 80s, but let me know if you're out there. And my very first memory of technology, which especially now as we see as mobile, which is so heavily used for social media, was Speak and Spell or Speak and Read or Speak and Math. And I would carry these around as, I'm sure you can imagine, a very small little Josie pretending it could do so much more than the actual learning that I was receiving, pretending it was basically an iPad of today. Absolutely love this toy. And then, because I lived in a very rural part of Wyoming, my dad decided for safety we should have a phone. But the phone required to be plugged into our minivan at all times. And it just seemed very unpractical that it needed to be in basically a briefcase. I changed my mind quickly about phones when my little heartthrob Zach Morris got a phone. These were called brick phones at the time. Very, very expensive, just like the bag phones of that decade. And that takes us to the 90s. Another big boom in technology was the internet. Now, some companies and organizations and governments may have had internet, but this is where it started to become accessible to the public with platforms or floppy disks like Netscape or AOL that you would have to manually add to your computer. And then, of course, we've got another app that started to show up during this time. You started to see Windows Live Messenger and AOL, remembering those maybe AIM usernames that you had, that you can't log into these anymore, but that were based on your email. So we started to see chat, which now we know chat shows up on pretty much every application, both private and public. And it was also during the 90s, you saw lots of forums pop up, from if you were a Hanson super fan to other kind of applications like maybe ICQ, or many, many others. And then 2005, I specifically earmarked this date because it was definitely a turning point. Still mostly on desktop applications that we started to see what we know of social media today. And that was especially in this tool that thankfully came out right after I had graduated from my undergrad, MySpace. And you could customize for days your profile that would give you colors and songs and debates of your friends of who was your top 8. And of course, Tom was your friend. It was around the same time that the Facebook showed up on college campuses, and especially if you worked at a campus at the time, you probably knew and had access to it earlier than maybe other of your friends and colleagues. But it was around this time that 4 applications came out: Tumblr, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. And these are all still in existence and highly used today. MySpace is still around, used for much different circumstances and not quite as popular. But I want you to think just for a moment who you were, what you were doing in 2005, if you got on any of these applications. I also want you to think about anyone that you serve: students, parents, maybe potential students, and what they were doing in 2005. Some of them may not have been alive yet or were just starting elementary school. So I want to situate how long these platforms have been around. And when I do conversations with students to even leadership educators about student digital leadership education, we have to have an empathetic lens to think about, if I had access to Twitter when I was in 6th grade, things might look a little different for me right now. So a question for you, if you haven't already added in the chat, what was one of your first social media platforms, or any platform that maybe came to mind as a throwback? Because there were so many others that came earlier. Clint sharing dial-up internet, it still haunts you, right? Absolutely. Like, now the struggle is maybe too many devices are on Wi-Fi, so you have to get folks to log off a little bit. Lee talking about the quarter per minute. Oh God, yeah, that is the challenge. AOL Messenger, Facebook, MySpace, AIM. Awesome. Yeah, throwing back, remembering where we came from with social media. Keep adding those in, and I'm sure you'll see Zanga, maybe some new ones or familiar ones to you. And that takes us to this last decade, which obviously we sure have started out this decade a little bit different than maybe we had thought when we were cheering in the new year in 2019. But what we know for sure related to social media is there are so many platforms that are out there, and new ones will continue to emerge and surge and sizzle out. So this session is not necessarily an in-depth tutorial. I might talk about a tool that you have no idea what it is, and that's okay. Maybe just write a little note next to you about what that platform is, and do a little YouTube search, or ask a colleague or a niece or a nephew to help us at least understand, because that's the first step as a leader, isn't necessarily to be on a whole bunch of tools, but if the people that you serve are on them, we at least need to know what they are, maybe some of the language, the challenges and concerns, as well as the possibilities. And that's definitely what I hope to share with you today. So talking about the people that you serve, who are they? Add that into the chat. I do encourage you to try to be specific as possible. So not just students, but maybe it is first generation students from maybe a specific region of the country or the US. If it's sophomores, if it's a specific residence hall, add that in. And some of these thought bubbles now, as we go along my talk, these are also maybe little notes that you can write next to you, because by the end of my time with you, we're going to hopefully connect all the dots. So then when you do think about the digital communication tools that you want to use to make a leadership impact, you can make sure it's for the right reasons. Adult online learners, great. Fraternity students, student leaders, non-traditional students, off-campus students, and parents and families. Wonderful. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you serve multiple people and populations, and we can make different choices based on all of them, based upon what platforms we think we might be able to connect with them on. Feel free to keep adding those in. And so I just can't help myself when I've only had the chance to be in Alabama once. It is a shame, as well as just be able to do a little bit of research. It's not stalking on the internet if you're just curious, because there's something formally in research called social listening on social media in order to learn and be informed by your community. And so you could do this too, if you have not already. On a platform like Instagram, you can search hashtags as well as tag locations. And so this one on the left is a post from, I'm assuming, a student happy to be back on campus. And then this other post to the right is on TikTok, which is driven by hashtags, which I just searched. One of the attendees' institutions, which is a community college. And we'll see if y'all, this is just like a really quick little TikTok. And so you don't have to be on Instagram, you don't have to be on TikTok, but you can search specific things about your institution, maybe even your favorite sports team, to learn about what community are posting on popular platforms about brands and experiences. What I also love about this time of year and doing the work that I do on the internet, it is exploding right now with celebrations of incoming students declaring where they're going to be going to university or college. And so, of course, I found some of these, again, from institutions that are registered here today. And these are all small opportunities for university accounts as well as campus leaders to interact and welcome these students online, just like you would if they were to walk into your door or office or attend orientation. And then again, the other post that I absolutely love to find online is these celebratory posts from your graduates. And of course, these are being so widely celebrated from friends and family. And even I wanted to include this one from the upper right from Austin, saying that, you know what, this graduation is not what I thought it was gonna be, but I'm still so thankful for that. And so these are just honestly real uplifting posts to find and to join in those celebrations, whether you know those students or not. And then, of course, as we think about really wanting to keep students as they graduated connected to our institutions and proud, it's fun to find posts like this from Legacy saying, not only did I graduate, my name is on one of the bricks. Isn't that the goal, right? We keep our graduates connected back to our institutions, so much so that they write their name on a brick or a building. And again, social media is a way that we can stay connected to the relationships we've had with our students, with our parents, with our stakeholders. And so this is a fun one to find. And then, of course, your current students that are doing really amazing things on all kinds of platforms. And Jack, I hope you don't mind. I found you here. I think this was on maybe Facebook, and sharing about some celebrations that you had last spring. And we want to think about how are we training our students and our student leaders and our grad students and our doc students. What does it mean to be a student at our university? And this was one that I thought was really fun to celebrate. So I've given you some examples of some social listening posts from students at some of the attendees' campuses, but y'all know best. You probably have a good idea what platforms that you know your community are active on, and this is going to be informative for everyone attending. So share in the chat what you find is the most popular platforms. And if it is helpful, you could say students, let's say Instagram, or parents Facebook group. Feel free to maybe connect just the dots of people and platforms. Okay, Facebook and Instagram. Instagram, yep. Awesome. Another Instagram. Instagram by far. TikTok is coming up. Facebook with alumni. Great. And so again, this might be just a little note that you jot down. Platforms you know your people and your community on. The other layer to that, as we know students, parents, alumni, even ourselves, we use different tools for different reasons. And we may want to connect with some organizations and some leaders in certain ways on certain tools, and we might not want to with others. And so then that would be the next layer to think about. Would a student want to connect with me or my office on XYZ platform? Even if the argument is no, I have some reasons of why it could be yes. Most likely it's based on the way that you're going to approach this platform that they are going to receive. Okay, so that leads me to my framework of digital leadership. I've been doing this work since 2013. Even before I got my doctorate at that time, I was starting to see a big shift and a big difference in how I saw campus public leaders showing up in digital spaces. And at the time, it was primarily Twitter and Facebook. I saw some vice presidents of student affairs and deans just taking to these platforms and being very authentic and connecting with students, while so many others, including the one I worked for at the time, was viscerally against these tools. And so as a good student, I wondered why. What is the difference? And what is a framework that I could help maybe others who are resistant or just ready to learn more how to approach a tool like TikTok, or even the way that we would use text messaging with our community that will be more received and also make us feel like we're being authentic. And so to give you just a really quick macro view of the framework, I want you to have a clear and realistic plan. What we also find, we take on all these digital communication tools and they become busy work and we're not able to manage them all. So my goal for you is actually less is more. I use the word personalization rather than personal or professional. As we know with digital and just life in 2021, so much is done in the gray. And that my hope is that you'll start to see this work as values-based, and not just the values of your campus or your institution or organization, but your values, what you value and what is important to you in your life. And we've actually seen a difference if you think about CEOs of campuses versus corporate. Some research has been done that at least at the president level, they're more likely to be active on Facebook and Twitter than corporate CEOs. So even our industry is trending just slightly more to social media than others. And so as we start at kind of the top, but presidents who have been consistently active online on multiple platforms, you could look at someone like Gordon Gee at West Virginia University. You can just see his personality jumping off the page. Or Walter Kimbrell, he's the president of Dillard University, known as Hip Hop Prez, and he really does hug. He's a hugger, and he hugs his students and just so full of life. And loves his students. And he talks about that on his platforms. And we can see lots of presidents from all types of institutional types. Now, it may not be written in their job descriptions, but there's becoming an expectation of, okay, how do I show up in this position in digital spaces? I've also absolutely loved the plethora of community college leaders showing up in digital spaces One that I'm especially a fan of is Daria Willis. She's the president of Everett Community College out here on my coast. And she has blogged her way through her first year as a community college president. Let's talk about role modeling. If any of you have aspirations to leadership in community college, you could follow her journey because her goal was to demystify what that process was, because she's also one of the youngest community college presidents. And you can find her on many platforms from Instagram to Twitter and sometimes on TikTok. And again, my original research really started in my roots of student affairs, looking at especially vice presidents, AVPs, and deans that I saw were consistently showing up on digital platforms. And of course, during this last year, we continue to see what that evolution looks like in socially distant or digital events. Oh, it looks like this transition's a little quirky, but I will explain it for you. So Dr. Gabe Willis, he's a dean of students at Southeastern Louisiana University. What's being cut off just a little bit is another screenshot of his vice president, Eric, who actually gave Gabe the directive that he wanted every student to know Gabe and to actively use social media to do that. And so this is just a screenshot of how many times Gabe has gone live, both by himself as well as interviewing others on Instagram TV in order to get out very timely information. There's been some hurricanes in their area where he just went live super quick, as you can see at the very bottom, or registration information. Of course, I'm sure he's sending those emails as well that we are so known for, but getting out the information he is finding. Students are flocking to his Instagram as well as on Twitter to receive that information. And then, of course, there's y'all. And don't worry, I didn't dig too deep. No one's going to be, like called out. But primarily, I found a lot of registrants for this conference on LinkedIn, which is very common, and lots of great practices being done there. What is so important as we think about digital leadership is, especially if we can't even imagine our use through the lens of a president or even a vice president, I want you to look at your peers or those that are even at this conference. And again, it's social listening. It's not stalking. When we look people up on the internet to learn from them, my goal for you wouldn't be just to scroll and to ask for that connection request, but would actually be a connection request for a phone call or an email, as relationships are at the heart of digital leadership. Because then we can also find really fun profiles and posts like this from Kathleen, goes by Penny Proud, Director of Student Activities at Huntington College and doc student. She specifically signaled both she is affiliating with her campus as well as attending as a doc student. And what I already have seen from my research on college students as well as leaders in the field is we can use these platforms for storytelling. And so the super fun photo and a description of like what's going on in Kathleen's world right now, talking about why she's wearing the colors she is. Hard to not see her coworkers and students, but a very reflective and genuine post on a platform like Instagram. I also have to address the other elephant in the room, because I posted on Twitter the other day that if I had to pick an emoji for 2021, it would be this, which is basically that like happy but anxious cold sweat emoji, which is sometimes, I got thinking, this is sometimes how folks feel about social media and even myself, because these platforms are not perfect. They are sometimes downright problematic, and you might be in a position where you actually are the one that are tasked with dealing with the problems. And even the thought of you having to put yourself out there more may not be worth that risk or that headache. And I don't want you to walk away today feeling like, well, the only way I can be a leader or to move up is to be active on social media. There's so many other ways that we can get you to use your leadership and influence in digital spaces. I also want to address that these platforms are not perfect, but also the institutions and organizations that we work at, as well as our society, are wrapped with systems of oppression that don't allow everyone to show up in the same way, or what I say might be authentic is not possible based upon the risk for you, and even based on positions. There's grad students, new professionals that wouldn't be able to say the same things maybe that a VP or president would. So I just want to address all of those things, and knowing that it's complicated. And that's why it's so important to have conversations like this, because these conversations need to happen openly, whether we might not agree or not about what it means to be a student affairs professional and what we can and cannot post on Twitter. We're honestly setting those terms and conditions now. And the future field is watching what it means to be a director, or what we're educating our grad students about, what they will think about when they post next. These conversations need to be happening a lot more opening. So as we think about purpose, knowing there's probably some anxiety, both about showing up on social, but also just like health and safety concerns right now. We want to make sure anything that we are doing in digital platforms feels grounded in purpose and in goals. And so I would love to know, what's at least one of your primary goals in the next couple months? And heck, you can even post a goal that you have just maybe for your life. But I think for this conversation, it would also be very helpful to drill it way down into the work that you do for student affairs. Because as we build on to knowing our people, thinking about what platforms they might be on, now we want to encase that with it being purposeful and going in the direction of the goals that we have with the work that we do, both short and long term. And add those in as you are ready, or write them down on your little scratch pad. And so this last section, I'm going to give you a framework. And the other reason why you might be, like that, the emoji that I shared earlier is you might be thinking, well, again, I'm not really interested in putting myself out there. But maybe your department, your division has social media platforms under you. You support someone that is tasked with running social media. A lot of my framework here is adaptable to department and division accounts, because the goal is to connect and communicate with our people with a purpose. And so we can apply that there. And Rebecca says, providing more online support. Catherine, our goal is to tell our story, passion, changing the state, valuing diversity, perspectives, actions. Awesome. Okay. And these are grounded in my book that came out in September. Yes, middle of a pandemic, I put out a book. Why not? It was 4 years in the making. And it comes from this framework of purpose-driven digital leadership. And I'm going to go over the 5 guiding principles and give you lots of examples in between. And as a very brief definition, it actually brings to life those guiding principles that digital leadership, it's personalized, it's values-based, that's going to activate your influence in order to navigate change and build stronger relationships with your communities online. And so let's go through what some of these 5 are. Change. Gosh, haven't we been forced into change this year? Ready or not, willing and able, we're accepting change. But the other big thing about change that I have seen, especially those that are activating this skill in higher ed and student affairs, is you can admit, I don't know things. I need help. Someone teaching me a technology or a platform. So this could come from reverse mentoring, asking a grad student or even a family member to help you learn a tool, which is, again, redefining leadership. One example related to this guiding principle I like to talk about is Ajay Nayar. He's the president of Arcadia University. He comes from the student affairs world, and he put out a number of posts around the time end of May, early June, honestly, all through the summer, with discussions of racism, and he would post both very long messages as well as videos on Facebook, on TikTok. He would put these over on Instagram, and he was reflecting. You can see here, as he wrote on Instagram, about anti-Black racism. He was having dialogue and conversations with faculty, staff, and again, not just posting these out maybe just through email or in Zoom meetings, but he was reflecting out publicly how he was doing his own anti-racism work after the killing of George Floyd. You can also see, related to change and using others to help him learn and discern, he's got a couple kids. I do have a theory that maybe having access to some younger generation might help you teach and be taught some of these tools. So, for example, his son is on TikTok, and so Ajay has been able to be on TikTok, and it's okay in some instances for a president to have a blooper reel. And again, redefining what leadership looks like online and on campus. Another example coming from your region that I sure have been a fan of is Regina Height. And you can see those big ol' puppies showing up on all of her platforms. But she's also out there stating the message of care and concern. Also, while celebrating her own professional journey on Instagram. This is really cute. Her 23rd first day as a SA Pro. And change also means we're keeping our eye out for new ways that we can better communicate and connect with our students. And so this last month, she actually put out a podcast, The Positive Sip. I'm assuming she's activated some staff and students on her campus to help make this happen, but I'm excited to see where this podcast evolution goes towards. So, question for y'all: who do you need to connect and communicate with the very most right now? Not just who you serve, but maybe who you are needing to communicate, or you're having challenges getting communicated and connected with. And again, you can feel free to be as specific as you like. Abby, I love that you have shared about her squirrel in the office stories. I took all 3 screenshots. If you're not connected with her on Facebook, I believe that's the only place she's posting them. And they are just bringing me life, and I am sure it would bring you life as well. So Abby, thank you for sharing about the squirrels in the office stories, because sometimes critters get inside and we need to document the adventures of those. So again, think about who do you need to connect with and communicate the very, very most right now. Not just adopting all the platforms to feel like you are adopting that change guiding principle. We're always staying grounded in the people that we need to serve and communicate with. The number 2 guiding principle is connection. We want to be on these platforms, not just for promotion and marketing, but to actually build relationships and create community. So an example, Melissa Shriver, she's the senior vice president at the Ohio State. This was a fun thread she posted just the other day on Wednesday. She does walks and talks. You can see her, I believe, was probably in the dining hall, celebrating the staff that work in those facilities. And then also some fun stuff. She had sushi for the first time that she sure did enjoy. And you can see all of her posts in that thread. She's interacting back and forth. She's celebrating folks. And so it can really be that simple. As we talk about connection, we also want to talk about our own situating ourselves and and talking a little bit about personalization, even on LinkedIn. This is Arlene. I actually just did a half day with a leadership team in San Francisco State and was connected with her. And I want you to find just a couple ways about she's offering connection and declarations almost based upon her cover photo, but also her about section. Many times LinkedIn about sections are pretty boring. Like, we can just admit that. I read her about section and I could not wait to send that connection request, as I saw so much of this was driven by values and by community. And so this stuff can show up everywhere, not just what you're posting, but even the way that you set up your platform. So it was also no surprise to me when Arlene posted this on Instagram. She also teaches at San Francisco and connects with her students on that platform. And I'm assuming this was probably like a last day of online class for them. And again, just a really real thank you and reflection to her students, and how much that then was celebrated and connected with them. Okay, number 3, personalization. So whatever words that really resonate and feel accessible and attainable for you, I do use the framework of holistic and authentic. The end of the day goal is that as humans, we are navigating how to build connections in these leadership roles that may already have these definitions of what even that means to show up, and then it gets complicated with our identities. But let me just give you some examples of how we're trying to, at least for me, move beyond just calling things personal or professional. I call them personalization because it should spark connections. This could be sharing about your personality. I know y'all have it. We've got, from maybe humor to it could be your hobbies, family or friends or people that are really important to you. And then, of course, the internet loves puppies and kittens and babies. And so sometimes we can join in that fun and those types of connections in digital spaces. So Mary Boyd, she is a provost at Berry College. I know more on the academic side, but I also want to say, like, typically a provost, and she teaches in chemistry, a student might perceive her in a certain way. And so she is very purposeful in her personalization of her Twitter account, where she creates her own memes. She is very funny chemist and provost, and she had I think it was elbow or shoulder surgery. And so she looked very similar to JJ Watt, who had a similar brace. And so she had some fun with that. And she had students coming up to her that she had never met, that weren't even in her college, because of this post. And this is where we start to see personalization opening access and connections with maybe people in our community and part of our campus that maybe wouldn't have reached out to us if it weren't for maybe some of these simple posts. So as we talk about pups, we've seen lots of presidents with pups. Renu Couture, she's the president of University of Houston. She adopted a dog that was found on her campus, near y'all, Tennessee. Their chancellor is featuring her pup often. And of course, we can't forget the cats in the executive offices. I believe this is Jerry of Teresa Riley. She's the chancellor of University of Arkansas Fort Smith. And so we already know, like, we probably had Zoom calls where our kids or our pets have jumped into the screen. I've got my door closed, so my dogs are hopefully still sleeping since it's early still out here in LA. But pets are relatable. We may have had a pet in our life. And that, again, is another access entry point into more deeper connections we can have. I also want to share how it's not always just, okay, well, I always have to show up and be fun or informative, that we are thinking holistically about what it means to be a leader in student affairs. So this is one example of Lamar. He's a vice president at Kent State, and he's a girl dad. He's a proud girl dad, and posts about his girls on Twitter and on Instagram. And again, family is one of those, strategic choices that you may even want to have with your family. And so this was posted on September 11th. But if you were to scroll up in his feed, it was just a couple days earlier that there was some horrific graffiti on his campus that he needed to speak out about, and actually cut off it on purpose because of the words that were used. But know that one day you might have something just gut-wrenching that happens, and the next in your post about what you do in your life, it flows through the spectrum. And so know that other leaders are navigating both the challenges they're facing as well as the time, again, spent at the park with their kids. Leaders in higher ed, student affairs, we got to humanize this digital experience, because if we are feeling challenged and disconnected by the emails or the endless Zoom calls, what are ways that we can offer a little bit of levity? So I want to hear just one small way that you can show humanity on social media. And that could be something, again, playful, like a pet. Maybe it's sharing some kind of story of how you were as a college student, personalizing your Instagram bio, anything. I would love to hear some ideas, or maybe even things that you've already done that you have found your community has really responded to in digital delivery. My pet turtle. I love that, Michelle. Love a good turtle. Our own stress. So that might be sharing a little bit about maybe what you're going through. I found it's so important for leaders, especially a public facing position, to state that this work right now is really hard, and maybe their own struggles. Yeah, admitting when things are tough, that can go such a long way, whether if it's just in a meeting or in a post somewhere. Awesome. I'm going to keep moving just for the sake of time. I've got two more to cover. This next one is strategy. So the biggest surprise of my early research and even recent is that even the most public-facing leaders in higher ed don't have a strategy. And maybe they have a strategy, but they're not evaluating it. And if we are to show and tell our value, we have to be able to set goals and then see if we've actually attained them through digital. I also want to make sure that you're setting goals that are realistic and that are aligned with you, not just feeling like you have to be on a platform or you have to do certain things. We also have to address that each of us, at least today, are affiliated with at least an institution, and what that means to be an employee, a staff, faculty, adjunct faculty for that organization. And again, this is where it's so important for more dialogue to happen at campuses, as we can't ignore, even in the last 2 years, incidents in the news where posts have been taken that impact employment. And again, I feel like we just need to have so much more open conversations with that. But at the root of it, again, the bear of it is having a flexible strategy that your community connects with. So Tim Miller, he's the vice president at James Madison University. He showed up right away when we had to send students off in March. And a few best practices to take away from this was a Facebook video, which Facebook loves. It's also captioned for accessibility, and he was wildly honest about how he's feeling today. You can find this on his page on Facebook if you actually would like to watch that video. And I don't typically include like stats, but you can see just how much this was shared and interacted with in this post. And he has evolved his strategy. Now in January, he's doing a series with some of his staff called Adulting. And honestly, this one on car maintenance, I was really tempted to watch, as I'm sure this might be a skill that I could use more of. And they've been doing Facebook Live videos of trainings for their students on Zoom. And so you can see a theme. I'm seeing a lot of videos make a significant impact during these challenging times, not only for timeliness, like this dean at Grambling University, G, shares in his car because Delta hurricane is coming. Got to get this information out as soon as possible. We also think about who's our community, who we need to connect with. Anna Marie is the president at University of Washington, and she posted both this post about wearing a mask in both English and in Spanish. Okay, last one, legacy. Legacy is what roots us into what we've known of leadership up till now. Because most books, if you look at leadership or theory or practice, it's not going to say anything about social media. And so I take from a lot of existing leadership theories. There's a whole chapter in the book that gives you the call to define leadership for you. Maybe that's based on a theory, but make the commitment to make positive change, to use your influence, to know that you have influence, even if it's a small group, maybe it's a small platform or in person, because in those influence relationship, we can find common purpose. And so we can see an example like from Adam Peck. He's now the AVP at Illinois State. He shot a video with his family at National Coming Out Day, which was wildly received, documenting, honestly, a value and a community of care as he shared. So find a theory that might be informative for you. Maybe this is Myers-Briggs or strength. That could also be something like servant leadership, transformational, authentic leadership. And think about how that can inform your long-term impact on a platform, not just to be on a tool like TikTok to go viral, but to ground it in something that actually is way more meaningful to the work that you do. I also want to share LT, Latanya Reese Miles. She's now the Dean of Student Affairs at Menlo. She runs the Empowering First Generation College Student Facebook group, which has over 5,000 members. And I asked her, what is your why for leading online? And she told me, my why is to share everything I know with people who don't have access to information. And that why is seen all up and down her feeds, and especially in this Facebook group that I would encourage y'all to check out. Another quick one to feature is Mamta Akapati. Used to be at Rollins College, now is at University of Pennsylvania. She's been blogging here and there on LinkedIn and literally wrote us a love letter toward the early part of last year that I definitely encourage you to go and check out. Her why is leading online allows us as educators to uplift the sacred stories of our students, helping them align with their hopes and dreams with opportunities to achieve those dreams. And so what I leave you with is the question of what is your why? What grounds you in this work that calls you to make those impacts in digital spaces? And you can add that in the chat. You can tweet at me and let me know. But also in the book at the very back is dozens and dozens of other examples if you need some inspiration of what that might look like. And no matter what your position is, you can do it wherever you are, whatever platform, whatever place, but just do it with your why. And then some of those complications about what to post, what's personal or professional, might start to feel a little bit less anxious when it's so grounded into that why. So I do know we're getting so darn short on time. If there is a question, I can answer it while I also share a few resources. I also so much welcome y'all to reach out to me through email or social media, and I would be more than happy to answer your questions. So again, maybe we can answer just a couple of questions as I share some quick resources. My website, josiealquist.com. I've been doing webinars, blogs, and podcasts since all our world shifted, as well as since 2013. So lots of resources there. If you are trying to build community online, I've got a Facebook group for you called the Higher Ed Digital Community Builders. Just search that in the browser. If you are a current or you aspire to a leadership executive position at a campus, find us at the Connected Exec. I do live trainings for leaders there. And then, of course, that good old book, Stylus Publishing is my publisher. They have discounts, so find them. And then just in a couple weeks, I'm starting a a professional development opportunity that's going to bring a group of professionals through 3 months of training and support called the Digital Community Cohort. You got to apply by February 1st. Okay, so I'll leave you with my contact information. Again, I do think I'm probably up on my time, but y'all, it has been such a treat. I hope you were able to take away just one piece, if not for yourself, for your teams, for the platforms that you have in your pages that you might oversee in your departments. And again, lead with that why. Thanks.